Of course. Here's Section 1 crafted according to your instructions. Clear narrative, character introduction, strong conflict, vivid language, focused storytelling, under 1,000 words, and without any subheadings or headers. A low hum vibrated through the command deck of the Imperial scout vessel Zeta. 9 as Ensign Lira Venn leaned closer to her monitor, squinting at the shifting anomaly on her screen. It wasn't a blip, not quite. It shimmered, faded, then reappeared miles from its last position in a manner no known ship could mimic. She stiffened, a whisper of unease crawling down her spine. "Commander Tark," she called. Voice kept flat through training. Unidentified vessel detected. It doesn't match any known profile. Commander Tark, a stern man with hawkish features and a reputation for ruthless efficiency, strode over with measured steps. His pale eyes narrowed at the restless flicker on the screen. "Cloaked rebel craft?" he suggested, though there was no real conviction in his tone. Rebellion ships didn't move like that. Nothing in Imperial space did. An order barked, and the vessel's viewports darkened, shifting into external observation mode. The void outside twisted as the ship's optics magnified the anomaly. At first glance, it looked like a trick of the light, a ripple across the stars. But then it twisted, seeming to glide without thrust, a silent silhouette against the abyss. Tarek's knuckles whitened around the back of Lyra's chair. "Transmit challenge code," he ordered, his voice low. The communications officer, a young recruit barely out of academy, obeyed, hands trembling as she sent out the Imperial identification sequence. Silence answered. No acknowledgement. No warning shots. Just the endless, unsettling glide of the unknown craft. Tarek hissed through his teeth. "It's taunting us." The bridge crew glanced at one another, silent, the unspoken fear spreading like gas through a cracked hull. Tarek straightened. "Pursuit course. Caution protocols active. I want to tractor lock the moment we're in range." Engines rumbled alive, and Zeta 9 surged after Phantom. As they closed the distance, the ship remained maddeningly out of sync with physics. It flickered, seeming to dip out of existence for heartbeats before reappearing hundreds of meters away. Despite no visible engines, no weapon ports, it danced through asteroid fields with a grace that mocked the heavy-handed engineering of the Empire. Lyra's fingers flew across her console, recalibrating scanners again and again. Nothing solid. No mass readings. No energy output. It was as if they were chasing a memory rather than a machine. "Commander," she said, forcing herself to sound calm. "There's nothing. Our systems aren't even agreeing on where it is at any given moment." Tarek ignored her. Pride, or something darker, rooted him in stubbornness. He would not turn back. Not when mystery threatened the Empire's dominion of fear. The unknown was a weapon he did not intend to leave in enemy hands. "Prepare for missile lock," he said, and the ship's weapons officer hesitated, a blink too long, before confirming. At that exact instant, the ghost ship shifted. It turned impossibly fast and faced them. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. There was no hull plating, no engines, just a glistening skin of refracted starlight, the suggestion of a vessel outlined in thin iridescent filaments. Without warning, the Zeta 9 system screamed. Lights flickered. Console sparked. A deep groan rolled through the ship's bones as if the fabric of space itself protested their pursuit. One by one, sensors went dark. Weapons offline. Propulsion in emergency override. The ship hung dead in the water. Tarek slammed his fist against the console. Backup generators now. But nothing answered. Around them, the ghost ship hovered silently, unmoving yet impossibly menacing. It made no attack, issued no demands. It simply watched. In the heavy stillness, Lyra felt it, the sense of being studied, dissected, not by a creature, nor by malice, but by something impossibly alien. She swallowed against the rising tide of panic. And then, just as suddenly, the anomaly flickered and vanished. The ship's systems were to life, emergency lights flashing, alarms crying out in confused, stuttering wails. Tarek staggered back, a rare crack in his unshakable facade. "Log everything," he snapped, his voice hoarse. "Every detail. This never happened. But, sir, Lira said carefully, command will want to report. If this ship can disable Imperial vessels at will. It was a sensor malfunction, Tarek said, more to himself than to her. A mirage. Do you understand? Around them, the crew nodded, some eagerly, some numbly. None wanted to be the one who stood before the Moths and said they had been bested by a ghost. As the Zeta, 9 limped back toward regulated space. Lira saved a private copy of the encounter logs. Her fingers trembled only slightly as she encrypted them beneath a meaningless data signature. The official report will be scrubbed clean, filed away into the yawning archives of Imperial anomalies no one dare revisit. But she knew what she had seen. She didn't yet know it would change the fate of the Empire itself. Of course. Here's Section 2 crafted exactly as you asked. Clear narrative, deep character focus, conflict development, under 1,000 words, no headings. The message traveled faster than light, encoded with layers of Imperial security. But there was no locking away the fear. By the time the report, sanitized and stripped of the impossible, reached Grand Moff Veskin aboard the Judicator, its contents already stank of suppressed panic. Veskin leaned back in his command throne, massive hands steepled before him. His face, carved from stone and scarred from a dozen brutal campaigns, betrayed no emotion as he listened to the official playback. A supposed sensor anomaly that left an entire scout ship adrift, systems crippled, with no tangible enemy to blame. Lies, of course. Lies seasoned with just enough truth to betray the terror of those who wrote them. Summon Admiral Roth, Veskin said, voice as soft and cold as a drifting mine. Minutes later, Roth entered, tall and precise, the embodiment of Imperial discipline. His sharp green eyes flicked once to the holographic replay still shimmering above Veskin's chair, the Zeta-9's final log visual. And for the first time in their long association, the Admiral hesitated. You see it too, Veskin said. Yes, sir. Veskin rose, his armor-weave cloak dragging against the polished deck. Good. Then you understand we are dealing with something that does not obey our rules. Rebels, perhaps, Roth offered cautiously. Advanced cloaking, a PSYOP's weapon. Rebels don't drift through asteroid belts without thrusters. They don't unmake reality as they move. Veskin turned, his silhouette stark against the endless stars. This is a threat to Imperial supremacy itself. And threats are not tolerated. He issued the order personally. Task Force Malleus, a dozen ships pulled from various sectors, fast and heavily armed, was to engage, contain, and retrieve the anomaly by any means necessary. It was not a hunt for survival, it was conquest. They would tame the ghost or destroy it. On board the Vigilance, flagship of the task force, Lira Venn stood stiffly behind the tactical console, promoted out of necessity after her experience aboard the Zeta-9. Her hands flexed at her sides, the phantom memory of cold observation still fresh against her skin. She had not volunteered. She had been summoned, an unwilling oracle dragged before the gods of war. Roth himself addressed the assembled officers. His words were sharp, efficient, carrying the certainty that the Empire's was absolute, that anything unknown must be bent or broken. Yet beneath his clipped orders, Lira caught the glint of unease, the rarest poison in an Imperial officer. The first engagement was a disaster. Sensors picked up the anomaly at the edge of the Ozran expanse, a desolate region peppered with dead stars. The fleet closed in, triangulating its impossible movements, boxing it with ion nets and null fields. They had numbers. They had firepower. They had precision. It made no difference. The ghost ship moved like a dream half-remembered. One moment it hovered. The next it slid sideways to reality itself. Torpedoes locked on to empty coordinates. Net fields snapped closed around echoes. Ships collided, confused by scrambled sensors, their targeting computers whispering gibberish. The Persecutor, a heavy cruiser, lost main power mid-maneuver and drifted helplessly into the gravitational eddies of a rogue planet. From a bridge of the Vigilance, Lira watched the chaos unfold, her mind screaming for logic where there was none. Her mouth went dry as her console flickered, not with damage reports, but with strange symbols scrolling across the screen. Untranslated, unrecognizable. This isn't an attack, she muttered, half to herself. Roth turned on her, jaw clenched. What? It's not attacking us. It's studying us. He sneered, about to dismiss her, when a new wave of panic surged through the fleet. The ghost ship hovered at the very heart of their broken net. For a moment, it seemed almost tangible, a hull of woven silver threads catching the faint light of dying stars. Then it vanished again, slipping sideways into nothingness, leaving behind only a guttural hum that resonated through every ship's core. When silence returned, it was total. 6 vessels damaged, 3 missing without distress calls. No confirmed contact, no captured artifact. Only whispered reports from bridge crews of voices in the dark, of feeling their minds peeled open like ancient tomes. The task force limped back to regroup. Pride was a precious commodity among Imperials, and it had been bled from them drop by drop in the blackness of space. In his private quarters, Roth faced Veskin via secure hololink. His mouth formed the words he had never imagined speaking. It cannot be captured. Veskin's eyes burned from across the stars. Then it must be destroyed. But if we can learn from it, do you doubt the Empire's destiny, Admiral? Veskin's voice cut like a vibroblade. No, sir. Roth lowered his gaze. The transmission ended. Alone, Roth allowed himself one trembling breath before composing his features again. In the end, there was no choice. Orders were orders, even if it meant waging war on something that did not understand their rules, or chose not to obey them. Meanwhile, Lira stood at the viewport, staring into the endless velvet beyond. She knew they were making a mistake. You did not hunt the storm without risking being swept away. And whatever that thing was, it was older, deeper, and colder than anything the Empire had ever conquered. She clenched her fists at her sides as the first preparations for a new offensive began to echo through the corridors. Next time, the Empire would not approach with capture nets or cautious scans. Next time, they would come with everything. And somehow Lira knew the ghost ship would be waiting. Word count, 987 words. Would you like me to move on to Section 3 next, keeping the same style and tension? We're building a really strong momentum here. Of course. Here's Section 3 following your exact instructions. Focused, vivid, advancing plot and character depth under 1,000 words, no headings. The Empire's most secretive minds convened under vaulted ceilings deep within the iron heart of the Citadel. They came robed not in military garb, but in the muted grays of the Imperial Science Division. Historians, engineers, and theorists whose existence was often denied in official records. At their center stood Magister Kelrin Voss, a frail figure whose eyes gleamed with the fervor of a man who had waited too long to be heard. Before them hovered a fragmented projection, a broken lattice of signals, impossible energy readings, and corrupted visual records of the ghost ship. Voss raised a trembling hand, tracing the stuttering images. This, he said, voice cracking like old stone, is not new. It is very, very old. Admiral Roth, still in full uniform, arms crossed tight over his chest, frowned. You mean rebel technology recovered from the unknown regions? Voss shook his head, almost pitying. No, older than rebellion, older than the Empire, older than us. The room shifted uncomfortably. The Empire did not officially recognize any civilization preceding its dominion as anything more than primitive footnotes. To speak otherwise bordered on sedition. Lira Venn sat silently at the periphery, permitted to attend only because she had been the first to witness the ghost. Her gaze remained steady as Voss elaborated. There are tales from the deep core, fragmented texts, and encrypted warnings buried in pre-Republic ruins. They speak of travelers called the Silent Weavers, beings who wove pathways between stars, not with ships, but with thought. They built vessels not to conquer, but to survive the collapse of worlds when time itself turned against them. Roth's lip curled. Mythology. Voss smiled thinly. Myth often grows from buried truth. Tension cracked through the room like static. It was easier to believe in enemy fleets than in ancient ghosts. Easier to prepare missiles than confront mysteries. How do we kill it? Roth pressed. Voss hesitated. If it is truly a Silent Weaver construct, we may not be able to. It may not operate within a framework we understand. It is not aggressive, not by design. It studies. It records. And if it judges us unworthy, Vasa's silence was all the answer needed. Later, Lyra found herself walking the endless corridors of the Citadel alone, the hum of hidden machinery pulsing behind walls of alloy and stone. Every fiber of her being told her they were preparing for the wrong war. The ghost was not an invader. It was a mirror, held up to a civilization bloated with its own certainty. A soft voice halted her steps. "You saw it," said a figure emerging from a shadowed alcove. It was an old woman, draped in tattered technician robes, her face lined with years of forgotten service. Lyra's hand dropped instinctively to the stun baton at her belt, but the woman only raised a gnarled hand in peace. "You saw it and lived. Few do." "I don't know what I saw," Lyra admitted, pulse quickening. The woman leaned in, breath sour with age and secrecy. "The drifter," she whispered. "It's what we called it when I was young. It's not here to fight. It's here to warn." Lyra stared. "Warn us of what?" The old woman smiled sadly. "Of what comes after empires, after pride, after war." Before Lyra could respond, security drones buzzed down the corridor, and a woman slipped away with unnatural speed, vanishing between maintenance doors that hissed shut behind her. Back in her quarters, Lyra stared at the stars outside her viewport. She thought of the drifter, of its impossible movement, its silent watching, a presence not of malice, but of inevitability. A soft chime broke her reverie. A transmission, heavily encrypted, meant for her alone. She opened it. A grainy image filled her screen. A chart of the outer reaches, marked with symbols she had seen only once before, faintly, fleetingly, scrolling across the Vigilance's consoles during the first encounter. Coordinates, an invitation, or a summons. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She knew she should report it immediately, have it dissected and filtered through the Empire's labyrinth of command. But she also knew what would happen to it then. Suppression, distortion, weaponization. The Empire did not listen to warnings. Lyra closed the transmission, memorizing the coordinates before purging the file. Her decision crystallized with terrifying clarity. She would not wait for the next ambush. She would find the drifter herself. Behind her, hidden in the shadowed corners of her chamber, the faint hum of something unseen vibrated the air, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. Tomorrow, the Empire would rally its fleets. Tomorrow, admirals and moths would prepare to strike with everything they had. But tonight, in a forgotten corner, a ship too proud to recognize fear, one officer quietly charted a different course. And somewhere beyond the known edges of the galaxy, the ghost ship moved, waiting. Of course. Here's Section 4, tightly focused, vivid, advancing character arcs and plot, within 1,000 words, and without headings, exactly how you requested. The stolen courier shuttle was barely more than a coffin with engines, but it served Lyra's needs perfectly. Unregistered, unremarkable, and expendable. She had left behind her Imperial credentials, her rank, even her name, shedding them like old skin. Only the stars and the stolen coordinates remained, guiding her deeper into the uncharted darkness beyond the outer reaches. Days blurred into one another as she crossed the borders of known space, chasing a phantom through territories where even Imperial long-range probes dared not venture. The void here was different, thicker, somehow, and heavier on her senses. Systems flickered without cause. Instruments recorded impossible fluctuations. It was as if the laws of the universe grew thin, worn from some ancient pressure. She didn't care. The coordinates called to her like a forgotten melody. The final marker lay in the heart of a shattered system, where a once proud sun had collapsed into a silent black pearl. Wreckage drifted across dead space. Fragments of ships ancient beyond reckoning, caught in endless orbit around a gravity well it should have devoured them long ago. A graveyard of failed empires. Her shuttle's alarms wailed as she descended, but she muted them with a trembling hand. In the endless dusk, she saw it again, the drifter, hovering, waiting, its impossible silhouette rippling like liquid metal across the void. A soft pulse echoed through the shuttle's hull, not sound, but sensation. A question. She opened her comms and spoke, voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "I am not here to conquer. I am not here to destroy. I want to understand." There was no verbal reply. Instead, a gentle pull on her vessel, guiding her forward. Powerless to resist, Lyra allowed the shuttle to drift closer until the drifter filled her view, a cathedral of woven light, every thread whispering of civilizations lost and futures unborn. Her instruments exploded into chaos. Readouts spun, languages she didn't know flicker across her screens. Charts of galaxies not yet mapped, songs of physics defying everything the Empire claimed as law. It was overwhelming, terrifying, beautiful. A memory surfaced unbidden. Her training at the Imperial Academy, where first lesson drilled into every cadet was simple and brutal. Control or be controlled. Dominate, assimilate, annihilate. And yet here, at the edge of reality, the drifter offered neither domination nor annihilation. It offered choice, an aperture open in the ship's surface, an invitation she somehow understood instinctively. Hard-hammering, Lyra suited up and crossed the gulf between her crippled shuttle and the waiting ghost. The interior was a labyrinth of shifting light and impossible angles. No gravity, no up or down. Only corridors that coiled and unfurled in rhythm with her own uncertain steps. Memories not her own flickered at the edges of her vision. Worlds blooming and dying, alliances formed not through war, but through understanding. The Drifter's creators had been explorers, archivists, survivors of a universe that had turned hostile in ways beyond comprehension. They had not built weapons. They had built warnings. A voice, or the closest thing to one, bloomed within her mind. Witness, choose, become. Vision surged forward. An empire brought low not by rebellion, but by its own blindness, fleets crumbling into dust as they fought shadows that cared nothing for conquest, worlds scorched into silence by enemies they had summoned by their own unchecked hunger, and yet, woven through the despair, a different path, one where understanding birthed survival, one where humility, rare and precious, forged alliances that even the dark could not easily unmake. Tears streamed down Lyra's face as the choice crystallized before her. She could return, deliver a warning no one would heed, watch as the Empire lashed out blindly, sealing its doom. Or she could carry forward the Drifter's true message, not as an emissary of a fallen regime, but as a seed of something new, a bearer of knowledge that could shape the bones of the next age. Her heart ached for the certainty she had once known, but certainty was a luxury the future would not afford. "I choose," she whispered. The Drifter pulsed once, a soundless bell tolling across the cosmos. Threads of light wrapped gently around her, rewriting, remembering, remaking. When she awoke, she was back in her shuttle, systems fully restored, a navigational path stitched into her console, one leading not to Imperial space, but beyond, toward distant worlds untouched by conquest. The Empire would fall. That much was inevitable. But perhaps, just perhaps, what came after could be something better. Behind her, the Drifter slipped silently into the void, its duty fulfilled, for now. Stars shifted, reshaped, as ancient forces stirred in their long slumber. Lyra set her course toward the unknown, the weight of destiny a fragile ember in her chest. Far behind her, in the heart of the Empire, fleets gathered for a war they could not win. And the ghost, the weaver of silent paths, moved on, searching for the next soul brave enough to listen. Word count, 991 words. Would you also like a brief epilogue or teaser that could lead into a sequel or continuation if you decide to expand it later? You have a powerful foundation now.